So before we jack up the vehicle, we need to brake these lugs on the ground. If you try to brake them when the car's up in the air, as you're pulling on the vehicle trying to torque it, either the wheel will just free spin or the whole car will pull forward and it will fall. So you can get it on here like this, get yourself a nice long breaker bar and come down. Nice thick breaker bar, you should always invest in one. Or if you have an impact gun like I do, you can just get it on there like so and spin them. Okay. All right, let's get it up in the air. Buy a solid piece of the frame. Let's get it up in the air. Okay, as you see here, I jacked the car up by the frame, but cars do have pinch welds. These cutouts is where you can jack the car up if you have a smaller jack. Put the jacks in here. With the car in the air, because I have both wheels up in the air, I can spin the wheel. Oh, damn, my steering wheel locked. Give me a second. So when you turn it this way, we'll have better access to the caliper itself. Now, we can get started. All right, let's jump into it. First thing we need to do, we need to get this caliper off. The caliper is what squeezes the pads in. This right here is a bleeder screw. I like to open up this bleeder screw because all the old brake fluid that's been used up the most is in here, and I want to get this out of the system. Okay, crack this open, and I'm gonna close it for right now. Now let's get these calipers off. Mine's are 14 millimeters, so it's out, and these are gone. All right, so what I like to do here is get my no spill kit on here. I mean my one-man bleeder screw on here. I'm gonna pull this off, right, like that. Hold on, actually I'll wait. So first thing I like to do here is, let's get some brake clean here. Clean all this stuff up, all this debris. Just gonna get a wire brush up in here and just clean this crud out. All right. Okay, you can see brake dust and stuff will build up in the boot in here, and when that happens, this is what wears out the boot cover, and when that breaks, brake fluid will leak out. You will lose your caliper. Okay, pull these bad boys out, put it like this. So now as I squeeze this in, like I said, you can use a C-clamp, but you will see fluid start to come out of here. All right, any air, any old brake fluid is starting to see its way out, and as I push this back, this will fill with fluid, and it'll get rid of any air, any old brake fluid, and keep this thing clean. Okay, now before I close this, all right, and the straw keeps any air from entering in, and now that's out. With that being done, look how much old brake fluid I just got out of there. Very nice. Okay, now that we got this ready, there's a brake hose that's attached to this. This brake hose, if it is stretched, if it is damaged, you will lose your brakes in the area. You don't want that to happen. Okay, so get yourself a tool here, and we're gonna hang it over there where it is supported and it's not putting any stress on this line. Now let's get this off. Pull this brake pad out, and we need to break these two caliper. This is a caliper bracket. This is what actually holds up the brake pads. Okay, let's get this off. There you go, that's one. Took a lot of strength. And just to show you, if you have a breaker bar, you simply come, and remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty, but the bolt is not facing us, so it is reverse. So now I'm just gonna come down here, and oof, oof, that bad boy is on tight, but she's coming out, and she's free. 1, 2. All right, now these bad boys are out. Pull this off. Okay. perfect time to talk about this. This rotor here is stuck. It's not moving, okay? The big thing you can do here is just get a sludge hammer and just bash it, and it will come out. But you will do damage to your wheel hub doing that. So I'll show you how to get it out another way. If your rotor has a empty hole, what you can use is you can use a random size bolt in here, fit it in here like this, right? And as you tighten this down, this will push against the hub and pull the rotor out with it. So let's just keep going. And as you can see here, the rotor's coming out. Nice. And this is why it's always good to keep some spare nuts. All right, now we can worry about cleaning and prepping for the new parts. First thing we're going to talk about here is these slide pins. If you see, this moves here. When your car moves, your rotor and your pad system, your brake system moves together with that. If these don't move, the brake pads will sit on the rotor, and that's how you ride the rotor. That's how you wear out your pads unevenly. That's how you can damage your caliper. So I'm gonna pull that out. See, I got this stuff on here. We're gonna clean this stuff off just like that. I like to use some silicone paste. I don't like to use regular grease, because as grease gets old and it gets hot, it'll start to like freeze to these things, and then it'll like lock and get hard and get stuck in the bracket. And when that happens, you have no choice but to buy a whole new bracket. All right, so let's do the same thing here. We're gonna clean this off. Notice I take it off one at a time. I don't think it matters if they're mismatched, but you never want to do it anyway. Nice and clean. You can always get a Dremel or something and clean this thing spot free if you want to, but kind of be a little bit liberal. Get it in there. And as you can see here, we got plenty of free play. That's what we want to see. Now, if you have new hardware, which I always recommend doing, remove this. It's old. All right, now let us clean this stuff all up. And we're just gonna hit it here with a big wire brush, and we see that this is nice and clean. Let's get our new hardware. You're gonna compare your hardware. Everything looks identical. Good. So here's one thing I like to do, and I'll show you in a second. I like to get this here. What I'm actually doing here is I'm coating the back of the surface. I'll tell you why when I get this ready to get put back on, okay? You can almost tell where it makes contact at, because it's kind of smooth metal. All right. When you're doing this, right, what can happen is some cars, these sit very snugly, like they have zero play in them. And not only that, you see like they have these stoppers here that hold it inside and out. All right, that feels better. Good, good, good. Hope I got the right size. All right. So what happens is that some cars, this will have play in it, and if this has play in it, what's gonna happen is the brake, this will screech. This will make little scratching sounds, and when you're going at high speed and a lot of noise, you will hear it. So copper anti-seize is like a gel that protects this from making any noise if this has any play at all in it. Okay, we have our bracket ready. Let us get our hub surface ready, and then we'll get our rotor on. Perfect time to check your wheel hub. Just spin it. Make sure that it is not loud, it is not noisy, it's not crunchy. Good. Another thing I like to do here is once it's all clean and this is all flat, I like to get a little bit of a little regular anti-seize around here. Right, let's check the weight of the old rotor. 15.5 pounds. 16.5 pounds. So literally this rotor has already lost in weight over a pound compared to the new rotor. Let's check the depth as well. I know that is hard to see, but we are just under 24 millimeters. Let's check how deep or how much depth the new rotor has. And we are roughly, we're at 24, but we're at like 24 and a half. It's just under 25 millimeters of depth. So just to go to show that old rotors do lose weight, they lose thickness. All right, now let's get our new rotor on, okay? So gonna get some brake clean here. Not always needed. This has a coating on it, but either way. Oh, and look at that, it already came off. Yep, that's already coming off. Okay, so these are just the coating. Wow. All right, you spray it and you wipe it down. And as you notice, you will see the oil and any coating come off. Usually that's not, they don't come off that easily, but that's fine. Let's get these on here. And just line it up like that. And we're gonna get ourselves a nut here to just hold it in place. But these are directional, meaning that as you turn, notice the slits will come into contact with the pad, okay? Notice it says right. This is the right hand side of the car. If you're looking at, if you're sitting in the car in the driver's seat, this is the right. You want this to go this way so that when it spins, you can see it almost makes like a form. And then when it hits the pad, you get the proper biting. So let's get the rest of this stuff on there. Now we're getting ready to put our bracket back on. I like to clean up the threads with a wire brush. And another thing I like to do here is get a little bit of thread locker. Some blue thread locker is removable. You don't need a lot of this stuff. The one thing we don't want to move is our caliper bracket itself. And this gets torqued down pretty high on this car. So just gonna slide that thing on there. And start snugging this bad boy down. Good. That's two. All right. And now, as you can see here, you always want to check and make sure you can spin your rotor and it doesn't make contact with the hardware. If it does, then you know that your hardware is not properly installed or something needs to be adjusted a little bit. All right, let's get the pads. I like to use some copper anti-seize. Copper conforms to whatever it's on. That's why I like using copper in these situations over this regular silver. If you cake this stuff on, what will happen is it can build up debris, it can build up grime, and it can actually get noisy. So anywhere that the brake pad and the hardware make contact, I like to put a little bit of copper anti-seize there so that it's nice and quiet, okay? On this car, it has the squealer. Squealers always go on the inside. The pad squeezes from the inside, so usually the inside pad wears out a little bit faster. You're gonna get this here. Like, notice I got these little tongs here. This is what's gonna pull the pad off of the rotor. Not all cars have it. This is just one of those cars that have that feature. So you put it inside this tongue right there, and then we get it in here. Okay. All right, that's in. And just remove any extra you got anywhere. Now let's get the other side. And it's always easier to see it in the front, but I'm gonna try and line it up, hook it down, get it in there like that. And then kind of squeeze that pad in a little bit, and boom, sits perfectly flush, okay? I gotta remove these gloves because they have anti-seize on them. We don't want to get any anti-seize on the actual brake pad or the rotor itself. And the last thing you always want to do is just feel. You should be able to kind of, not always, but you always want to be able to feel like your brake pad can move relatively freely. All right, good. Now that we got that set up, we're gonna torque. I forgot to actually torque these down. Let's torque these down. 113 foot-pounds is what my car likes to be torqued with. this is a lot of torque, so I'm using this torque wrench here, and good. Perfect. Okay, let us talk about one of the last few steps to avoid any squealing when you're doing brakes, okay? So no matter what quality brake pad you buy, what can happen is, if you see here, this makes contact with this squeal shim, okay? Sometimes there's an up and down motion or a rubbing motion, and when metal and metal scratch together, you can kind of get like a squealing sound, right? So you have something I like to use. You can use anti-seize. Some people use different types of materials for this. I like to use this disquiet brake stick, so that this will basically bond to the brake pad itself, and this will keep the rotor, keep the caliper from making any noise. So I'm gonna hold this up here, get some in my finger, and just rub it on. I'm not caking it on. You don't need a ton of this stuff, but just get it on there. Now, make sure you don't ever twist your line. It's supposed to go on a certain way. Get this on here like so. All right, that is perfect. Now your caliper bolts usually get torqued down to way less. Mine's is 20 foot-pounds, which is really not a lot at all. So I'm gonna get these on here hand tight first, just like that. If you guys remember, I removed my brake bleeder screw, so I'm gonna put this back on like that. That protects it from any rust. And let's screw this 14mm down. And perfect. Like I said, 20 foot-pounds is very minimal. Not everything has to be torqued when you're working on cars. I'll do that on the other side, but for now I'm going to turn this back like this so that we can see it forwardly, and then when you spin this, notice that we can spin this freely. That is perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. Nice free spin, and this side is done. I'll take this sticker off before I call it a night, but it is only 5 o'clock, you guys, and it looks like it's like pitch black out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here, and I'll show you what you need to know about your brake reservoir and pumping your pedal, things like that, okay? Talk to you guys in the morning. Okay, so before we actually start doing anything, make sure you hand spin all your lug nuts first, okay? You can make them really just finger tight for the most part, but you do want to snug them down somewhat. If you put the tire down without putting these lug nuts all the way on, your tire will kind of sit crooked. We don't want that, okay? So we're just gonna tighten them down. Okay, so just remember, when your lug nuts start to get rusted or rounded, it's a good idea to just go buy new ones. There's been times I've seen people get breakdown and they need to put a spare on, and their lug nuts are literally either like these will kind of swell and the socket won't fit, or they'll be so stripped and so rusted that they can't get it off. So anytime you see that your lug nuts are starting to get in kind of bad shape, just go buy some new ones. 2, notice I'm going in a cross pattern so that we're nice and even. 3, make it a habit to always go in cross patterns. 4, and then I like to just go over all of them again. We got our new brakes, our new rotors on. We have our bolts torqued down. Let's go to the brake reservoir and let's show you how that works. After you do your brakes, you're gonna notice that your brake pedal is gonna go to the floor, okay? And what's gonna happen is introducing new fluid into those calipers, and then you'll notice that the brake pedal will start to give you some pushback, or won't go any further. That lets you know that the calipers are back full and the brakes are engaged. Let's go to the reservoir. You can see here there is a max line. When you if you noticed here, when I did it, I cracked open the bleeder valve, so I removed some of the old fluid out of here, and then the fresh fluid up in here will push down into the calipers, and we need to refill this back up to the max line, okay? brake reservoirs want to call for a certain fluid, okay? This calls for .3. I think I got some .4 on me. You can put .4 in .3. I want to let you know that. But if your car takes .4, do not put .3 in there, all right? And as you're slowly pouring it in, the filter will let it come in, and you will see that the level is slowly rising back up. Last thing I want to let you guys know is that brake fluid is hygroscopic. I mean, brake fluid is like really corrosive, so try to avoid getting it on like your paint, especially the outside of your car. If it gets on your paint, spray it with brake cleaner, wipe it off immediately. It'll beat up and destroy the paint, okay? So now we have our brakes on, we have our fluid refilled, we have good fluid. Now is the actual time of bedding in your brakes, okay? Let's talk about it.
So the idea or the point of bedding your brakes is to get your brakes nice and hot, and in doing so you will transfer some of that pad material from the brake pads over to the rotors. And that's really how brakes work. The rotors are always coated in some pad material. So the point of bedding the brakes is just to get a nice even coating of that material. If the coating on your rotors is uneven, you can get brake shuddering, even to the point that it feels like your rotors are warped.
So that's enough information. I'm gonna stop boring you guys. Thanks for watching. Till next time, out.